And welcome to another edition of the Linux Install.net podcast. My name is Brian Wagner. With me, as always, is Mr. Corey Silver, Mr. Greg Martin, and, of course, my long-standing co-host, Mr. Joseph Luzzi.
Good evening.
That's kind of creepy.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Welcome to LinuxInstall.net.
In a world
There we go.
Where four men talk about Linux.
in
We're
a
all
world
screwed.
where Linux rules.
There you go.
All right. So how's everybody doing this week?
Excellent.
I'm cold.
Are you?
I'm sorry.
Oh man, dude, my fingers are freezing.
Okay, I'm not sure that's what he meant, but okay.
Oh wait, okay. So that just went over my head. I'm just gonna sit here now. It's 23-hour thing, people. 23-hour thing. Come on.
Yeah. Why? I guess let's start out with why have you been up for 23 hours there?
Insomnia, really.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
I
I
used to
hate
have it. I used to have it really bad when I was younger, and then it kind of comes and goes in spurts. But just the past couple of days, I've barely slept at all, and I figured, instead of sleep, might as well just do a podcast. So
We appreciate that for now.
Brian will
For
put you to
now.
sleep, don't worry.
Oh, thanks.
Oh, there's the link. Cool. Yeah.
All right. So what are we going to start
All right.
discussing? Who has done what this week? I actually have been playing around with the new Firewall.
Ooh, what'd you play around with? Which one?
I downloaded the new Sophos, their UTM home version.
I see.
And that is, it's based off Linux and is extremely, extremely thorough as far as firewalls go. Took me a little bit to get it set up. I'm still figuring out port forwarding and trying to get it to work with all the games I play. So
Yeah.
I did have to roll back to Smoothwall for a little while until I got some things further figured out. But for the couple hours I played with it and had it in place, things did seem a little faster, and it was working pretty good. And they definitely do seem to update it much more frequently than Smoothwall, I would say, because I had just downloaded the CD last week, and it was a pretty new version, I believe.
Well, was that the reason you migrated?
Well, I think Brian migrated off of Smoothwall a while ago. I've stuck with it. They've had one update probably in the past year. So I've just been looking to do something a little different. The Sophos software is almost a little more enterprise.
Yeah, see, I haven't been impressed with Sophos on the desktop, so wasn't willing to give them a try. So it's glad to hear somebody else did.
I mean, it's definitely, well, remember they picked up, what was the software before? They
Firewall?
bought another company and integrated it into their software, I think. And I can't think of the name off the top of my head. But like I said, from what I saw so far, it was pretty good, and within an hour of me having it installed, it had already found another update to the software.
It was a Staro, by the way.
Yes, Astara was the one I was thinking of.
Yeah.
Oh, Star Gateway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, Astro is a good firewall, so okay.
Well, it's now Sophos.
Yeah, Sophos, yes, exactly.
Now, I'm glad you got that running, Joe, because I tried as well, and it was not so easy, so I just kind of gave up on it.
Trust me, it took me some playing around and finagling, and I finally got it working and everything. But like I said, the biggest problem I had was actually getting it to work with Asheron's Call. Considering that's a 13-year-old game that uses some really, really funky networking in it. I mean, it's a big UDP type game, not just TCP traffic and everything. I mean, so I opened up what I opened up in Smoothwall, and things were still being blocked. So I got to sit here and really just kind of go through some logs and see what's being blocked and just poke some holes in the firewall and start doing some further port forwarding. And I just, considering it was Saturday morning is when I was playing around with it, and Kim was downstairs playing the PlayStation, I was like, all right, that's it, I'm done. I'm going to go downstairs play some PlayStation.
So you just throw your PC in the DMZ and call it a day?
No, I actually had a whole backout. I had my whole backout procedure. I basically shut down that computer, moved it out of the way, plugged the Smoothwall server, the computer back in place, rebooted everything. And that was my backout plan. I had a contingency plan in place, just like most enterprises should.
Yes.
The more you...
Very good job.
But yeah, it was interesting. I mean, I was sitting here reading quite a bit, and even after reading quite a bit of the documentation and talking to one of the guys at work that runs it, I guess he had quite a bit of problems too with getting NAT working and port forwarding and stuff going. He said it definitely is not easy, and he sent me some of the screenshots of his stuff, so I could kind of go off of that. But he was just like, yeah, it's by no means, the documentation really needs to be much better. It's almost like IBM wrote it.
It's almost like, who wrote it?
So
That's cool, man.
See, now I switched to, you're right, I did switch away from Smoothwall. I switched to PFsense, which is a BSD based.
yeah, I remember that. Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm running.
For a couple reasons. First, I wanted to do something with BSD because I don't have any BSD anywhere else in my network, and I kind of feel like I should keep up with and have a system somewhere where I can go and look at what the differences are. Not that there's that many. There really aren't a lot anymore. They've kind of adopted the best of each other for the most part. There's a few small differences, but for a firewall, you're not really going to see it. PFsense doesn't really update any more often than Smoothwall did, which is kind of disappointing. But the guys at PFsense, security is what they do. Like the contributors to PFsense are all security focused. Not to say the people at Smoothwall aren't, but Smoothwall is supposed to be trying to make a business out of this, and I think they're letting the open source one lag to try to get people to buy their purchase software. Where there is no financial company for PFsense. It's just
Right.
security practitioners who like to do it.
Yeah, one of the first things I did when I had that thing in place was I was like, all right, let's go out to grc.com and let's hit all of Steve Gibson's little programs he has written there to try to see if there's any holes in the firewall. And that thing was pretty much right out of the box lock solid. I mean, it saw nothing.
Nice.
So I was very, you know, I kind of figured that, considering, like I said, you're basically running enterprise software, and the license they give you is only good for 50 IPs.
Yeah.
So considering I don't need 50 IPs in the house, that's more than sufficient for me. So it'll be a fun learning experience.
You're saying 50 IPs would be a limit. I'm like going, well, I might hit 50 IPs if everybody comes over and throws on their laptops and all the phones, smartphones, and all that stuff. I could probably hit 50 IPs, actually. Does it just limit you to what you can set the internal network to? Is that how it limits the 50? Or
I wasn't too sure. And I wasn't too sure if those 50 were DHCP handled or if you could throw statics in there besides that 50. I'm sure it has to know that there's 50 IP addresses being used. So, I mean, they can't just
and
give
it might only be looking at how many machines are connecting through it and only blocking 50. So you might have 100 machines, but if only 50 of them are connecting to the internet at any given time, you're okay.
And that's how that's how a lot of other software works. I think WebSense works the same way with their licensing, the web monitoring software, like that a lot of companies used. Where I worked last, they used that, and their software was basically the same way. It went as to how many connections were hitting it, as to what you basically had to pay for.
Yeah. Because one of the firewalls that we sell, the WatchGuard firewall, which is also Linux-based, the WatchGuard firewall uses WebSense to do part of its reputation. It's got a multi-phase web reputation thing, and WebSense is one part of that reputation.
Well,
mentioned,
the way WebSense kind of works is if you have 200 license, it'll block 200 IPs. Anything after that 200 basically can just see the internet full blown wide open.
Oh, that's sweet. That's what you
Yeah.
want.
So
I'd rather it work the other way.
No, we've run
Flip
into that
mask and go no.
We used to run into that at where I worked, and it was very interesting. Halfway through the day, we would see that the internet was full blown wide open, so we'd basically restart a service on the Windows server to reset the license piece, and then it would reset that counter because somebody didn't want to buy more licenses.
Well, that's one way around it, I guess.
Take that license server.
It was. It worked.
That's all that matters. So, I'm trying to think of what I've been doing. I've been fighting with Linux and trying to get 2 monitors working.
I gave up that fight a long time ago.
I didn't. I got it to work, sort of.
Sort of. What do you get, a half
sorta.
picture on? What do you get, a half picture on each screen?
I have both screens fully showing, right? I can take my mouse from one to the other, but I cannot take windows from one to the other. I don't understand how that works, but my mouse very easily
That's
floats.
interesting.
But if I take any window, it's like there's nothing there. It doesn't show up on the other screen. Now, for my work laptop, I have no problems. I have dual monitors set up, and I don't remember ever even really working that hard at it beyond getting the NVIDIA software working right, which was a total pain in the ass. But that was the NVIDIA software's fault, not Linux's fault. But
There was a new NVIDIA driver for Linux.
Yeah, well,
It
I'm
was
not
released
using,
last week or the week before.
Oh, I might have to try that on my laptop because there's some. Actually, no, it's been pretty stable. I'm not going to mess with my laptop. What am I thinking? Stable, I ain't messing with it. I'm in the middle of too many projects right now to start screwing things up. I'll wait until closer to Christmas when there's nobody bugging me. But on this, so this is the new super PC that I set up. It basically, I could probably have gotten it to work a lot easier if I had just used the 2 video ports on the motherboard. Which, for what I'm going to do, I'm not a gamer, so for what I'm going to do, that probably would have worked fine. I was in Columbus the other week, and my little sister and her husband had a couple of video cards laying around, so I said, hey, if you're not using those, can I borrow one? And so that was where I got my bright idea that I would put 2 video cards in, and that's pretty much why it took 2 weeks, because I didn't think that was going to be an issue, but it is. It's obviously a real pain in the ass to get X Windows to work with more than 1 video card, which doesn't seem like it should be at this point, especially since there's tons of people with video walls with 6 and 7 video cards. I don't understand why it's so hard.
But they're all the same chipset, though. Are you running like chipset?
Hell no! I'm running an Intel chipset, and I'm running an ATI AMD chipset.
Well, now that could be a small problem there, Brian.
Wait, what, you think he actually planned that out before he did it? Come on now.
When I need a video card, I just threw it in there. I'm like, come on, it's Linux. Windows can do it. Why can't Linux? I mean...
Oh, even Windows chokes.
I don't... I know it has to.
What distro were you using?
I'm doing, Pinguy, so basically Ubuntu.
Oh.
There's tons of documentation out there about how to get dual monitors to work, but everybody's using a single video card to get 2 monitors to work, and that's not that difficult. It's when you start trying to have different video cards from different, like Corey said. Corey's giving me, he's right. It's because I'm not using the same chipset. If I went and bought another ATI video card and slapped that in there, it would probably, even though there were 2 video cards, it would probably be easier because it would be the same driver. It's the problem is getting X to load 2 drivers. It doesn't seem to want to do that. Or at least
So it sounds like your whole issue was self-inflicted.
Well, sure. Isn't every problem with a computer self-inflicted to some degree?
Pretty much. Exactly.
We have a new session now. LinuxInstall.net podcast, Brian's therapy session, where we all find out that all his problems were his own fault.
Can't blame my parents. That's for darn sure.
And the Linux noob was right. Oh my gosh.
Hey, blind squirrels and acorns. What can I say? Corey, you've been playing with Zorin, right?
Yes, not just Zorin,
No?
but Zorin OS Light.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, it was the light version. No,
What
it's
is
been absolutely excellent. I had
the
a
difference
system.
between the light and the full? Like 64 calories versus 120 or something? Or what?
So I believe the full was based off of the full Ubuntu distro, whereas Zorin Light is based off Lubuntu. Is that how you would say that? So the
Yeah,
light
the one
version.
that uses LXDE.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes. They based it off of that one. So it's a little more lightweight in that respect. So it doesn't need as much processing, disk space, RAM, etc. Which is really handy because the system I'm installing it on is an old Pentium M processor with 1 gig of RAM.
Yeah.
And so even like when
Smoking.
I've tried out Pear, Peppermint, regular mint, and all of them were just a bit too beefy. Even Peppermint, of course, that was more errors than just it running slow. But no, Zorin OS Light has been really fast on it, so it's been impressive for the hardware that I decided to stick it on.
Now you said that was XFCE, right?
Yeah.
No, LXDE.
Yeah, LXE.
But isn't that the one with what's the window manager? Isn't it XFCE?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Anyways,
We'll find out.
I just thought that might be why it was running faster, because XFCE's whole purpose is to be smaller, lighter, faster.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now with this one, it was kind of neat where you could select like the Windows XP look or go with the Mac OS look.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I want the Windows look. So
Yes. So you like it? It
I
looks
absolutely love it. I've been installing tons of software, and the menu is really easy to navigate. It's been easy to update all the software, find the software I want.
Okay, so the ultimate question is, can my grandma use this?
100%. I mean,
Awesome.
this is dummy proof. I mean, it is a fantastic Linux distro for non-user friendly people.
So the verdict is, it's grandma's seal of approval. We're good to go.
Yes. Yep.
Now, LXDE is also, just in case anybody cares, is also what the setup that I was using on my Raspberry Pi. Not Zorin, but the LXDE.
Yeah, Windows. As far as window managers go, like LXDE is probably one of the lighter weight ones you can get. I think it's even more lightweight than XFCE, frankly.
Yeah.
To some degree, but.
So I should try out Zorin for my son. Switch it over because he's got his ancient machine. And
Yes, this should run beautifully on that.
now, what browsers did it come with? Did it come with?
It came with Chromium. I installed Firefox just because I'm very loyal to Firefox. But I think they give you the options of Firefox, Chromium, Opera, and Midori.
Okay.
I haven't heard of that one.
I forget.
I think it's a knockoff of the 3.6 branch of Firefox.
Okay.
Okay.
The big thing it touts, though, is being able to dynamically change the user agent string, like, arbitrarily from the menus. So you can just, like, click a menu and go, make my browser look like Internet Explorer 6 to every server, and have it make my web pages look like shit.
And let me get hacked.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there we go.
Dun, dun, dun.
So,
No,
well, you like it, and you have
Yeah, I love it. Now I installed like the VLC, LibreOffice, Wine, some ISO manager tools, and it's been going great.
I might have to give that a shot myself, actually. It looks pretty decent.
Yeah, I'll have to build a VM off of that.
I was playing with, you brought up VLC. I was playing with VLC again with some of the stuff. I've been trying to find a new way to edit the podcast. So I was using VLC to actually rip the audio. I forgot how big a Swiss Army knife the damn that little program
Oh,
is.
dude. You open a file on that, hit Control R, and you're all set, man.
Yeah. If you can't open it in VLC, it probably shouldn't be opened.
Yes.
You might have to go download a codec or two, but for the most part, the standard set is pretty complete.
I haven't had to do any codec additions to VLC. It's chewed through everything I've given it.
Cool. All right, so the other thing that I had noticed, I was catching up on podcasts today since I was working from home, and
Slacking.
no, I wasn't slacking. I was fighting with our favorite three-letter acronymed company software, the Very Blue software. They're wonderfully lacking documentation.
But whose software?
IBM's. I don't care. I'm so tired of fighting with. It's like awesome software if you can get it to work, but the documentation is fighting you every step of the way. So I was listening to something else just as something to keep my head straight, and was listening to I think it's the latest Hack 5 episode, and Darren Kitchen had never really talked about what had happened to him. I had remembered hearing rumors from people, not him, that he was getting harassed before and that he'd had problems that he wasn't really talking about. And for some reason, he decided on this week's episode to go into about a 10, 15-minute rant where he disclosed that when they went to buy the hack house in Virginia, the bank they were working with to buy the house found out that they were the Hack 5 guys and, oh, you're a hacker, you're going to hack in the house, and decided not to let them have the loan. And I guess they've had some other issues. Most recently, and I guess this past week, the bank they had been using for their corporate bank for the Hack 5 hack shop decided that they were no longer worth keeping around, and they closed their account without really telling them. They had sent them a letter, and then Darren Kitchen's like, okay, so you sent me a letter. It might be here next week. You closed my account now, though. So maybe an email or a phone call would have been better. So he goes off for a good 10 or 15 minutes talking about that. Assuming, and I'm going to make a big assumption that everything he's saying, there was no other issues, and that everything he's saying is true, which he didn't sound like he was BSing, you know. How shocked are you guys that somebody at a bank actually knew that they were hacking? B, that somebody at a bank knew what hacking meant, except for the security guys. And like somebody executive level decided that was a risk. I'm not really sure yet. I still have yet to figure out what the risk was, because if they look at the business, it's pretty obvious the business isn't doing anything illegal, or they would have been shut down by now.
The presumed risk is based off of a gross misconception of what the term hacker actually means. And I'm saying this because I've had similar things, nowhere near as grossly bad as what happened to Darren happened, but I mean, I've had people treat me like complete and total shit because they've assumed I was a hacker, you know what I mean? A hacker in the sense that, oh, you're going to break my system, you're going to take all my data, you're going to steal my identity, blah, 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 all this other crap. And, you know, the point Darren was getting at was the original definition of a hacker was somebody who just toyed with a system. That's all it's ever been, really. And it's not about stealing data or being nefarious or being malicious or being an asshole or any. Of course, I mean, there's people that do that, you know, but that's not what it's about. And what the bank did to him was based off of a very gross misconception of what hacker means. So these people are sitting here thinking that, oh, they work for a company called Hack 5 or they own a company called Hack 5. They do computer hacking, so they must be stealing somebody's data. Well, we can't condone that, so let's just freeze their account. That way they can't do shit, and they're not a risk for us. And it's bullshit. It really is.
Yeah.
Now, if I was a businessman, I would take advantage of this and, you know, offer him, hey, I will provide my services. You know, as a bank, I will, you know, have your account out of all this, because think about that. I mean, that's wonderful publicity, you know, for somebody who is well known amongst, you know, how many followers, and say, hey,
Oh,
they
yeah.
actually understood that, they know what I'm doing and they condone, my business. And
Yeah, but they probably didn't look at it from that aspect. They probably didn't look at it to how big of an audience does this company have? How large are they? What do they do? They were looking at kind of like what Greg said. They're
Yeah.
hacking. That's it. We know that's bad. We've been told by our security people that's bad, and that's a stigma. So
Yeah, a banker hears a
scarlet letter
banker.
it.
Yeah, a banker. I guarantee you, a banker hears the word hacker and they think, well, shit, there goes 90 of my accounts.
Mm-hmm.
They don't think, well, this is somebody who could actually benefit me. This is somebody who could protect those accounts. They just think, well, now they've got the SSNs for everybody in that database, so we're completely screwed. And it's just crap, man. It really is.
Yeah, we should send them the link for the ethical hacking certification.
If only if only it were that easy. He was talking about making bringing back the realization of what hacker actually meant. And at this point in the game, I think it's just been bastardized so much that you can't really do anything to bring it back.
But I mean, and he's even tried that before. He's done spots on Discovery Channel. He's done spots for other news programs where he describes what a hacker really is. And he's not the only one. Kevin Mitnick's done it. Like really well-known hackers. I mean, Steve Wozniak is probably the biggest hacker in the of hacker fame. Besides, hacker from the negative perspective is Mitnick. Hacker from the most positive perspective possible is Steve Wozniak, right? Here is the ultimate hacker. This guy hacks all kinds of, still to this day, hacks all kinds of stuff. Walks around with an old rotary dial phone that he's taken the cell phone guts out of and slapped a cell phone into this big old honkin' rotary phone, hooked it all up, and it all works just like a regular old rotary dial phone, but now for a cell phone.
Yeah.
Well, him and Jobs back in the day used to do a lot of the phone hacking, didn't they? Do the blue box?
Yes, they did the blue box, and Wozniak never wanted to sell computers. It was Steve Jobs that convinced him to sell computers and stuff like that. But I mean, yeah. A smart bank at some point, and somebody will catch on to this at some security professional inside of a bank will go to their management and say, with somebody with influence, will go to their management and say, look, we could win some points. We could, if we talk to them and approach them correctly, we can probably get them to promote us as reaching out to them and trying to offer them services. We get their services, and I mean, I'm sure they're not Amazon. The Hack Shop's not Amazon. It's not going to do that much volume, but it's a very, in the hacker community, it would go a long way if you were the ones providing the service. Especially if you were like an internet bank where you could cross state lines, and just be if you were an internet bank, that would be a great set of publicity. It would be one way to start getting your name out there. I mean, these guys, Hack5's getting ads from Ford, they're getting ads from all kinds of companies that, like big name companies. These aren't small little companies that don't understand what's going on. I don't know. It's crazy. I've watched it happen before. I've seen people overreact. I've protected people from getting fired on more than a few occasions because somebody tagged them as being a hacker. And I'm like, yeah, well, okay, maybe, but had other people that have just in testing systems exposed things, and then people freak out. It's I don't know. The hacker term gets thrown around way too much. People for a long time tried to get people to say, "Oh, crackers are the evil ones and hackers are good." And I'm like, yeah, the terms are just too close phonetically that people are never going to be able to keep them separate. Term's gone. I think you're right, Greg. I think the term is just totally.
It is gone, and the negative connotations with that word are going to stick. And then anytime anybody gets dubbed a hacker, it's going to result in somebody losing their job or somebody as in Darren's case, losing your business accounts and your banks, and there's not going to be anything you can do about it.
Yep.
I wonder if the bank actually looked at some of the stuff they sold on the shop.
Well,
they
and
might
here's-
have.
and made the decision based on that.
I guess that would have made sense because some of the stuff that they sell is designed for penetration testing. More specifically,
I would say
like the
most of this.
pineapple.
Yeah, most of this stuff is if you look at it, because I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah.
And I would
Well,
say
no.
most of this stuff is.
Oh no, it's designed to do what you think it's designed to do. You know what I mean? But it's more like, I would put it to you this way: do you stop providing the business bank account to the gun shop because they sell guns to the people who go shoot other people?
Yeah, we're not even going to go down that road.
Well, I'm just saying it's an example though. It's a relative example. I mean, they sell the product. Are you going to stop them from selling the product because of what the product does and not what the people do with it?
I don't know.
It's a mess.
It's a bad idea.
Yeah.
It's a bad idea to pick on any single group. It doesn't really matter. I mean, we're talking about hackers right now, but you know, it could be anything. Just like them all freezing the money on WikiLeaks. Was that really the right thing to do? I don't really think so. I don't think it really accomplished anything in the long run. Who knows? But shall we move on? Are we done ranting?
Yes, we're done.
Sure.
Well, at least I am.
Yeah.
All right. Joe has our first story for us today.
Go, Joe.
Joe's talking to... Joe, tell us about Cisco's latest
I think I'm the only ones that put stories out here because everybody else is slacking today. Cisco acquired Meraki. Oh yeah, Greg had one. Cisco acquires Meraki for $1.2 billion. And for those that don't know, Meraki is a 330 employee startup. They provide Wi-Fi with cloud-based management software to remotely control and manage the hardware security and wireless infrastructure. Basically, Cisco is just making a bid to grow their cloud business by acquiring this company.
Kind of sounded to me like they were trying to buy somebody who did a better job with the cloud management software than they did.
Yes.
With their recent, I don't know, a couple months ago, they had that snafu where they locked everybody out of their routers. If you did the update, you locked yourself out of the router.
That was with home routers.
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying they're going to use the same. I mean,
yeah.
This one was focused on corporate. You know, that's where they were just using the home people to test the software out. They were eventually going to sell it to enterprises. I mean, it might have been a hosted solution instead of their cloud solution, but I just want to start a company and sell it for $1.2 billion.
Well,
Brian's retirement slush fund.
Yeah, that's... Geez.
I mean, if you can start a company and build it up to 330 employees, I'm sure you have a pretty decent company then.
Yeah, I mean, the founders were probably making money as it is.
As I say, 330 is a little past startup stage.
I was just gonna say, how long has this company been around? I mean, I really didn't do too much searching on Meraki and how long they've been around, but obviously this isn't a 6-month-old company.
No. Well, I hope they didn't grow to 330 employees in 6 months. That's kind of crazy.
If so, we definitely need to follow a business model or something, whatever they're doing.
Here, they started in 2006.
All right, so they've been around for 6 years.
How are they still calling them a startup?
And they're trusted by over 10,000 customers?
That's
that's more than a startup.
Yeah, this is definitely not a startup.
That's... Wow. I mean...
Gee, and they were funded by Sequoia Capital and Google to get started.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, Sequoia invests in all kinds of businesses, but it makes sense for Google. That explains why they were trying to go with some of their wireless stuff. Being able to push out Metro Wireless and that kind of thing. So
that was a story that had just popped up the other day when I was reading Google+. Somebody had posted it on there, so I thought we might just want to mention that. Cisco's expanding into a new market.
Yay, Cisco.
So, you want me to go on to my next story?
Sure, go on to your next story. I have lots to say about the next story. So does Greg, probably. But
Next story is from Computer Weekly, and it is Enterprise Android a BYOD hell? Basically, bring your own device hell. Basically, the article was just talking about bringing devices to work with Android. With the new Android Jelly Bean 4.2, there's supposed to be much more enterprise security in that one. The problem is, out of all Android devices, that is probably the least used OS that you will probably find in your enterprise, and trying to lock down some of the older versions of Android may be a little more difficult. So...
Okay, I'm going to call bullshit on that last part, but go ahead.
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, part of the software that I support, one of the softwares that I support, does MDM, mobile device management. And it's doing it not just for Android, but it does it for iPhone or iOS, I guess. Android and iOS are the two mains. It still does it for BlackBerry for some unknown reason. It doesn't do it for Windows 8, but it did do it for Windows 6X and I think 7. And they'll do 8 eventually, but you know, there needs to be a mass appeal, and at this point, nobody's buying 8. So, I don't think that they're making a big deal in this article about the number of devices and the variants.
Yeah, this is almost another article that does go back to the whole thing where it's a fragmented environment, which, truthfully, who cares?
Yeah, my point before has been and still is how many different PCs do you have and how many different versions of Windows 7? Because, you know, you have to think of each person who does or doesn't have a patch as a different version, because they could have a different vulnerability if the security is what you're worried about. So getting them all set that way is complicated. We got the Munchkin joining us. So I don't know. I don't think that the number of devices that are out on the market matters, or that the number of the versions of the OS matter. I don't know. What's everybody else's thought?
You know, I'm kind of on Joe with Joe on this one. I'm kind of with Brian on this one, frankly. I do think that the fragmentation is going to cause an issue to some degree. Simply because the security features, but the native security features in Android, you know, the article points out that still 80% of the market, which that number may or may not, you know, whatever. Suffice it to say, most of them are still running version 2.x of Android. Mm-hmm. And the security features present in, you know, the incrementing versions of Android have always been staggered. So they haven't been there, then they got there, then they kept getting better and better and iterating over each other. You know, comparing the security features in 2.2 and 2.3 to, you know, 4.2, there's a drastic difference. And just this user space, I mean, talking user space security features, there's a lot of different things you can do. Supporting those different kinds of degrees of security, I could see that being an issue. Even if you have an MDM, I would think that would still be an issue. Frankly, I don't see why you couldn't just say, well, I see why you could do it, but you know, you could just take a draconian policy to it and say, you know, if your device is not revved to this point, don't bring it in. Plain and simple.
And that's exactly what I was thinking as well. Because in the next 6, 12, 24 months, this is going to be a completely moot point.
Yeah.
Because everybody's going to be running 4.2 or higher.
Well, the thing is that frankly, the only devices I am seeing people buy nowadays that are running Android do have at least ICS on them, which is going to be, you know, version 4 and up. You know, I don't see anybody running Honeycomb, which I know the article makes a note about that, but I don't, you know, who cares? Honeycomb, nobody used it. It's a moot point right now. You know, ICS and Jelly Bean, and that's where it's at. And most of the devices I'm seeing purchased are people purchasing those with, you know, ice cream sandwich or Jelly Bean on there. So that adoption curve is going to go up greater as time goes on. I think it's going to go up quick, actually, with the Nexus 4, the Nexus 7, Nexus 10, the HTC phones coming out, Samsung phones, all those are running, 4.0 and up. So, having that draconian policy saying, if you're not running at least 4.0, your device isn't going to work here, don't bring it in, I don't see that being a problem.
I agree 100% with you. I mean, there's going to have to be a point where you look at your security and you say, there's only so much we can do to lock down the environment. We have to make a cutoff. If this is our cutoff, it is X, version X, and that's pretty much what you go with.
Yep.
So I agree with you 100% on that.
Plus, I mean, at this point, everybody should in the very near future be able to do free upgrades to a phone, like Greg said, with at least Ice Cream Sandwich, at least 4.1.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And at that point, you can, with 4.1, you can encrypt the data, you can encrypt, and you can do a lot of management around making sure that people have lock screens, making sure that they change the lock screen password if that's your policy.
Yeah, they have. They have 4.2 features entire device encryption for that kind of thing. So you don't get that with anything. I don't even think 3 Honeycomb has a device encryption on it.
I think 4.1 had it.
Yeah, I think that's where it started at too. Actually,
Ice Cream Sandwich, I think, is when it started. But yeah. I've talked to a bunch of people, and the whole point of using a smartphone to do stuff is not to store the data on the device itself, right?
Okay.
So the whole point of doing things with Android devices or iOS devices is that you do stuff in the cloud, for the most part.
Okay.
And if you're going to do everything in the cloud, then all you have really is a cache, which you can change the cache settings to just delete the cache when you close the application. So how much data... I don't know how much data is really getting exposed. Encryption, though, for those things that need to be secure, I guess makes sense. But most of the apps...
For my phone, I've got Citrix, and I remote into my work desktop if I need to, or check email. I mean, really, I don't store anything work-wise on my phone, but I still will use it for work.
You can do that. Have you really done that ever?
Yeah.
Really?
Yes.
I mean, I saw you pull it up at lunch the one time just to show it off to everybody. It did look cool.
Look what I can do.
But is it actually functional?
I have done it.
I've
looked up email, and I've looked up my employee ID before because I had a brain fart.
So he's done it once. All right, that's fine.
I was drinking at the country club, forgot my employee ID, looked it up, was able to log in. It was fantastic.
So in order to get alcohol, you managed to use it. Okay, got it. All right.
I guess one of the things, Brian, like what you were talking about, is you store all your data in the cloud. Yeah, you store all the data in the cloud, but that device still has to be on your corporate network. Yeah, you can do it off into a VLAN. It can be segmented off on the network, but it's still there still has to be some sort of risk, I think, by allowing it onto the network that could possibly be attached to some of your other business functionings.
Yes, and I agree. And there's the risk of viruses and all that other stuff. The thing is, Android, as opposed to iOS, allows MDM manufacturers, doesn't matter which one you choose, to create an application that runs on the device. And I haven't tried anything lower than, what was 2.3 or 2.3.4 or something like that. Whatever ran on the original droids, because that's what my boss has. He has, or the second generation droid. So whatever OS came out on that would have been 2x something. From that point forward, we can control every application that gets installed, and we could actually lock you down and not let you install applications. So if we knew that there was an application that was a virus or something like that, we could go in and say, uninstall this application if you see it. If anybody tries to reinstall it, uninstall it as soon as it gets installed, so it never stays on the system. That comes into that part of when you set the rules for what people are allowed to do with bring your own device. The big problem so far has been getting everybody to agree what the rules are going to be for bring your own device, because we're talking about rules that companies would have to agree to. Like, the company would have to say, you have to be on 4.x or 4.x or greater, and you have to be willing to let us put an agent on your machine, on your phone, And while that agent can be set up so that they can't delete personal email accounts, it can be set up so that it'll do that with Exchange. When you connect to an Exchange server too, or Lotus Notes, either one, because they're corporate, they all push back a warning to you that says, the company is asking for, and you have to grant access to delete email related, email associated with that account. So email caches can all be managed that way. It's just a lot of this is people freaking out because they think it's something really difficult, and it's not that it's difficult only in that you have to go define processes that don't exist now.
Right.
That's not hard. It's just something nobody wants to do, including me. I don't want to do it either, but I want people to be able to use their own devices. Because the other part of this, everybody's freaking out about Android and all that other stuff. What I'm hearing, especially small businesses talk about, is extending BYOD to people who don't want to use the crappy 5-year-old PC that they're giving them. But the person is like, I'm willing to go buy my own PC, let me put it on the network. And like my own laptop or something like that, for whatever reason.
But if they did that, I'd go the opposite. I'd bring in my 10-year-old HP that I just threw Zorin OS on.
I'm not saying that they're saying if you want to run a Mac, that's fine, but it's on you, more or less. Is the one I see most often. It's the girl or guy doing the graphics art stuff for the website, the catalog, all that other stuff that wants to use a Mac because they feel a Mac is better at doing the graphics stuff than a PC. And so instead of forcing them to use the PC, the company's unwilling to spend $2,500 on a laptop. This person wants to use the tools they're familiar with. They're willing to spend the money. They see the value in it. So it's just that kind of stuff.
So what happens when that computer breaks down? The company's not responsible for it. That person is. They're basically not productive at work then.
It's kind of the way it works with most businesses with their PCs. There's not a lot of them spending the money there's not as many of them as should be spending the money on a managed service provider as they should. That's what I'm finding.
No.
So somebody in the company has been declared the PC person, and whatever level of experience that they bring, and trust me, they're never to any of the levels of anyone on this panel right here, because it's not their first priority. It's something they tinker with at home. It's not what they do as a job. When you do it as a job, you develop certain skills that just you can't pick up any other way. If you're focused on it, you're just going to naturally pick up skills that just because you're going to see more. But for super small, I'm talking super small businesses. I'm not talking even the Meraki size, like 300 employees. I'm talking like 50 and less, 20 and less. The smart ones hire somebody to do managed service, right? And then it's the managed service provider's problem. But most managed service providers are going to support at least Windows and Mac. And if you have me in the stable, then you support Linux too. But nobody's asked us for Linux yet, so I'm not really concerned.
You're on an island of one with Linux, aren't you, where you work?
But actually, for some reason, VMware is getting a lot of hate too, and I'm going, I don't understand all this hate. Why do you want to use what's Microsoft's Hyper-V?
Hyper-V.
They're all hot to use Hyper-V. I'm like, I don't know.
Somebody drink the Microsoft Kool-Aid.
Well, Microsoft keeps paying for them to go to these sessions. So, and they drink the Kool-Aid. Yes, they should. They're selling this stuff. So, anyways.
Next story?
I
think this one's Greg's.
It is. And we're going to actually do a reasonably timed podcast this week. That'll be great.
We're not.
Go ahead.
No, we're not. Don't say it, because then it's not going to happen.
All right, anyways, move on here. New Linux Rootkit emerges.
And right when Brian goes to save it, boom, the podcast is just all gone.
Dun, dun, dun.
Actually, the beauty of the new way I'm doing it, it would be on Google, because I'm just taking the stuff that we record to the Hangout. So we'll have to have it. I'll do a podcast on that at some point about how I changed the way we do it now.
All by himself.
Yeah. as I always have. But now I can hand everybody else a script because I found a new way to do it.
Oh, geez.
I don't need whatever that software was. Anyways, let's move on.
Okay, yeah.
New Linux Rootkit emerges. So tell us all about this new rootkit, Mr. Developer.
Mr. Developer.
That put Tux on its side.
Yeah. Tux fell over this. It's really not that big of a deal, frankly. I just thought it would be something to, entice the listeners or, the current panel if they were so inclined. Basically, I'll spare the technical details because I read the threat post article that I had in here, and then I actually went through and analyzed the source code for the exploit. Basically, what it does is it does iframe injection into web pages and hijacks the traffic and routes it off to somewhere else to download a bunch of garbage and stuff like that. The methods in which the exploit remains on the system, hides files, the typical rootkit shit, it's actually very weak. And the researchers were able to find the rootkit quite easily. So not very critical. It's not doing any damage. It's not being found, at least as far as I know. I've only seen 1 or 2 cases where it's been found in the wild. It also seems to be specifically targeted to Debian squeeze. The specific kernel that it's compiled against is a subversion of Debian. So it's mostly, Debian servers that are getting hit by that. But yeah, like I said, basically just iframe injection, garbage traffic. It's pretty easily found if you know what you're doing. So
how is it getting the browser to run the code?
It's actually hijacking kernel hooks. So it's grabbing hooks for TCP send message and injecting traffic over that. So anytime any HTTP traffic is sent over the system that uses TCP send message, then it injects the iframe into whatever it is you're doing and then just sends garbage code through it.
So it's not browser specific then, it's any
browser. No, it's actually hooking into the kernel itself, so it doesn't matter. Anytime it hits HTTP traffic, it's doing it. The way it did it was actually pretty interesting too. I mean, like I said, I'll spare the technical details, but the way it did it, it actually targets 64-bit systems, and it relies on higher order bits that don't get used by AMD 64 architecture, and it injects code in those higher order bits, and that code will arbitrarily get executed, thus causing the garbage code to be downloaded. So if you're interested, you can get the source code for the exploit, check it out, read both the articles too. It's a good read if you're into that kind of stuff, as am I. So, but the big thing though, nothing to worry about. It's nothing serious. And like I said, if you know what you're doing, you can easily find it. So, no biggie.
Cool. I don't really have any other questions on it. I was just curious as to how it.
Yeah, see, I have a bad habit. I have a bad habit of throwing these really technical articles in. I'm like, Brian's on his own little island with Linux at work. I'm on my own little island with these exploits in my apartment. So.
There you go. So I don't really see any way to block it.
Scroll down through some of the comments, and some of the commenters are talking about that.
Oh, do they?
Yeah,
I don't believe they mentioned it in the article.
No, the commenters
I was looking through it again to see if I missed something, but
yeah, I mean the commenters discuss ways to mitigate it, but frankly, I don't use Debian, so I'm not really concerned about this all too much. Yeah. I'm a Fedora guy.
See, and I'm a Debian guy. I like Debian. I like Debian's package management better. It's much more robust.
Dude, Yum is where it's at.
No, I wrote enough RPMs that I'm going to go to the death on arguing with you on that one.
The one commenter on here says he read that if you append exit 0 to rc.local, it would prevent the rootkit from persisting across a reboot.
Yeah, and the thing is that exit 0 command in the etc rc local file on the specific distribution that was targeted, that command's actually at the end of that file in most cases, like just by stock installation. So even if, you know, on just, if you just fired up a Debian box that was targeted with that, and, you know, you did, I haven't tried it yet, but there's a pretty good chance that code just won't get executed, period, if that exit 0 command is in that RC local file by default. But just check and see if it's there. If you're curious, it's under, like I said, it's etc rc.local, and check at the very end of the script to see if an exit 0 command is there, and if it is, there's a pretty good chance that code's never going to get hit. So mitigation's pretty easy.
Yeah. And it seems like getting this rootkit onto your computer, you'd actually have to be browsing on the internet to actually get this rootkit on there. So if you have a server that's basically just either running applications or serving up web pages or something and not really going out and doing any calls outside itself, you're probably not going to get this rootkit on there, I'm guessing.
No.
Or itself or servers, like your known trusted servers.
Right, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
the main thing that they were getting at, though, is they're you know, the people that analyzed the code were saying that this looks like the early attempts of, you know, cybercrime hackers, to use that word. They're basically migrating to Linux for obvious reasons. So, you know, this is just early attempts, rough drafts to see what can be done. Not a serious attempt. I'm sure if it were more serious, it would be a lot worse than this. So,
something we'll just have to keep our eyes on.
Yeah, it's interesting to see that Linux is getting enough attention now to where stuff like this could become prevalent. You know, and
hopefully they just go back to the Windows side. let Brian deal with it.
Yeah, Brian can fix them all.
Thanks.
It's just interesting because I think from that perspective, I think you know, viruses and spyware and every other subclass to that kind of stuff on Linux would be really interesting to see, because, you know, the entire operating system is at your fingertips, literally, by the source code. And being able to dissect them, I think it would actually be quite easy to dissect exploits on Linux in comparison to, you know, Mac or Windows and such. And
yes, sometimes trying to find that stuff on Windows, some of the scripts and stuff you have to use and what you have to dig through, is you really got to know what you're looking for.
Oh yeah,
and you really only learn what to look for by just being forced to sit there and just do it and figuring it out. And having done that in the past, it sucks.
Yep, that's how I learned how to do it.
And I've had people get rootkits on Linux before. Now they accomplished it a different way. I mean, it wasn't like it was a drive-by thing. It was somebody was, let's just say, stupid, and created a dummy account that happened to choose a dummy account name that was a pretty prevalent dummy account name across the internet, and then used something like 12345 or really stupid password. And somebody used a brute force SSH attack and hit that account, got in, and then infected the system that way. But they were already on the system, so it wasn't that hard. Once you're on the system, it's not as hard to compromise it as this is, because this is drive-by. It's not, you don't know what you're getting, so it's kind of hit or miss as whether it'll even work. And they're easier on Linux because there are certain things, especially if you're a seasoned system admin, you look at things and it's like, that doesn't look right. Why? And why does that have those permissions? That shouldn't be that way. You know, why am I in the Etsy directory and all of a sudden something's not owned by root or nobody? And not the application name. You know, it's some user's name is owning files in the Etsy directory. That's probably something you should raise a eyebrow to and go look into and see why.
Group owners floppy.
Yeah, there you go. That's another one. So I am always interested in hearing about these new ways to exploit Linux. I'm not a believer that Linux is impervious to attacks, and I don't think that's what Greg's saying either, or anybody on here saying, for that matter. I think it's just because it's open source. It's that double-edged sword, right? It's so easy to look into the code and find an exploit if you're first inclined, and second skilled. But at the same time, as soon as you find the exploit and exploit it, and somebody catches you exploiting it, then they can shut it down in literally minutes.
Yeah.
And if it's something like that, I've heard, I haven't personally witnessed it, but I've heard that Linus is pretty willing to put that in front of the group that looks at security holes and fixing them in the kernel. For something like this, it would be something that was in the kernel. So it would go up to the kernel team. And the kernel team is usually pretty open to accepting bug fixes for stuff like that. And I'm sure they'll look at this. I'm sure this hole won't stay open for long. So that's the only good news. But there will always be a way to break a system.
That's what they're there for.
That's right. All right. So, does anybody have anything else? That's all we have on our story list.
Yeah, if it ain't broke, break it.
Any other stories that anybody want to talk about? Going once,
Nope.
going twice. We're out of here.
Nope.
All right. In conclusion, if you have any people that you would like us to interview, please email us at podcast@linuxinstall.net or give us your feedback or ask us questions. We're all more than willing to answer questions if you guys want to send them to us, so please feel free to send us any of your questions, and we will take the time to write up how to do whatever it is. Either, if it's super short, we may just send it back to you. If it's something that's a little more complex, then we'll probably make an article out of it and post it on the site.
Okay, can I make a plug really quick?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, with relating to questions, I recently just got my website back up and going. Federated names, it's just, gregfmartin.com, but I do post a lot of Android stuff on there, so if anybody has any Android development related questions or just Android questions in general, just email me at gregfmartin.com, and I can, or just check out the website, and, like I said, just Android stuff there all the time.
He's got some cool stuff up there. You guys should check it out. It's definitely, he needs more articles, but,
I post a lot of the main reason I use it is basically for posting development updates and a development journal, just someplace to dump my brain to when I'm overloaded. But I would like to think some of that stuff's useful to some people, especially because most of the stuff I work on is stuff I see a lot of questions for with no answers. Yeah. So, like I said, if anybody listening has any questions about Android or Android development in general, just hit me up and I'll take care of it.
Cool. All right, don't forget, we have a Facebook fan page. Did you know that, Corey? Did you like the Facebook fan page? I think you have.
Yes, I did. I actually got rid of my Facebook page, so
yes.
About that.
Your Facebook account?
Yeah, I wiped it out. It's gone.
When'd you do that?
Last week. I was fed
Really?
up with Facebook. I got rid of it. It's gone.
I would like to.
Take that, you purple bastard.
Anyways, for those of you stuck on Facebook like me, because family members are there and that's the only thing they can figure out how to use, you can find us. We're at facebook.com/linuxinstall.net. And yes, the dot's actually in the name. And you can follow us on Twitter and Identica as @LinuxInstall, and follow us on Google+. I think we're all on Google+.
I'm still on Google+. Don't worry.
Yep.
Some of us more active than others.
Every day.
And you can check that. If you look at our Google+ page, you will see whenever we're doing a podcast. So we've been trying to do them every other week. I got kind of jammed up on our hosting provider, so our podcasts were too big, so I couldn't put more than I just released our last one, and we recorded it like 2 weeks ago. But that was because I didn't have enough space to put it up there. So I'm looking for other solutions, and I will find a different solution than Libsyn, but they've been good to us so far. Anyways, if you have any other comments, please feel free to post them on iTunes, Odeo, Stitcher. Stitcher is actually looking really cool. If you haven't tried out the Stitcher app, try it out. Or anywhere else where good, fine, fun, and wholesome podcasts are found. And Joe, what should everybody go do?
Go install some Linux.
Have a nice week, everybody.
We'll see ya.